latter followers or later followers of the gospel writers according to these biblical scholars. And the report, as I said, very short, winds up by saying a 1983 Gallup poll found that 63% of the American people believe that Jesus will return. The Jesus Seminar is a project of the Westar Institute in Sonoma, California. Dr. Robert Funk is with that organization and is a spokesman for these group of people, and he is joining us on the phone lines from California. And along with us in the studios, and I'll introduce our other three guests a little bit more in detail in a moment, are three ministers, Highland Schlabotkin, Shelley Volk, and James White. And as I said, we'll introduce them in a moment. But Dr. Funk, thank you for joining us today. When was this seminar held?
When was it held?
When did this thing actually take place? This group of 26 scholars meeting.
Well, this was our 9th meeting, which we held over this past weekend in Sonoma, California, from Thursday to Sunday.
And the scholars that you talk about came from what area or what churches or denominations? In other words, what are these men and women who met?
They're all people who hold academic posts in leading colleges, universities, and seminaries across the country and Canada. And we even had one person from London, England.
All right. All of these people are theologians, academicians. You yourself have a PhD, as I understand, from Vanderbilt University. You taught at the Harvard Divinity School. You have a Protestant background. And this is the 9th meeting. Is it one meeting a year, or has this been going on for a number of years? Or
we meet twice a year. We began in 1985. And we set ourselves the task, first of all, of inventorying everything that had been attributed to Jesus in the first 300 years. And that includes materials not only in the New Testament, but in all of the other Gospels and Gospel fragments that we have preserved for us in the ancient world.
Mm-hmm.
And then we set out to evaluate each one of those items. There are more than 2,000 of them in this inventory. We began with the parables. We met at the University of Redlands 3 years ago and went through all of the parables, and the last several meetings we've been engaged in evaluating all of the aphorisms and other materials.
All right. Now, a lot of people really will hear what you said, and they might not get a grasp of this. Besides the Gospels, I think everybody should know what we're talking about here. You're talking about the 4 Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then you said that there are some other things that are not considered to be part of what you would find at a typical Bible and a typical bookstore, and you said there are more than 2,000 different items. Where do they come from?
Well, another principal source that we fortunately have had now since the 1940s is the Gospel of Thomas. Thomas was found in a Coptic version among some documents discovered at Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt in the middle 40s, and has now been generally available. And then we discovered when Coptic Thomas became available to us that we already had some Greek fragments of Thomas, and we just didn't know what they were.
This Thomas, of course, would be one of the apostles, the so-called doubting Thomas that we read about?
Yes, possibly so, though there is some dispute about which Thomas it is. There is also the claim by the title of this book that this Thomas was the brother of Jesus.
All right. Now, I read this paragraph in introducing you that was in USA Today, and I must tell you, I usually don't like referring to USA Today. I consider it to be America's gross oversimplification of the news. They've managed to boil it all down into sort of an adult weekly reader. And so we had, out of what is obviously a long-term study by a group of people who are, as I said, theologians and academicians, one little paragraph here. Now, this thing deserves more than one little paragraph, so that's why I'm asking some very basic relative questions to this.
Yes, I understand that.
They said that in this one little paragraph, once again, and the only quote that I have is that you folks strongly disagree that this man Jesus says that he expected to return to earth and usher in a new age. Is that a good synopsis, or what exactly did the organization say?
No, I think that's correct to say that. What we did was examine in some detail, in great detail, in fact, all of the sayings attributed to Jesus in Mark 13 and the parallel passages, which are found in Matthew 24 and Luke 21. And we decided all of those sayings that have to do with the future appearance of the Son of Man and related phenomena are really secondary. And as a consequence of that, I asked my colleagues whether they would formulate some general recommendation to the public at large, and they did that in several different ways, but in the way in which it is reported in the paper is essentially correct. And I think that owes to the fact that most of the people in New Testament studies these days would describe or characterize what we call apocalyptic language that's used to describe the future kingdom, for example, like we find in the book of Revelation, would describe that as mythic and symbolic. So consequently, they feel that the literal interpretation of those materials is incorrect to begin with. And then the likelihood that those words do not go back to Jesus makes them doubly suspect in the minds of many.
All right, now, Dr. Funk, we've talked about what the group, the scholars, feel that he didn't say. What then, to turn this thing around and phrase it in a slightly different way, what then does the organization, the group of scholars, feel that he was saying, or was he really saying anything about this at all?
About the future kingdom?
About a future kingdom, about him returning, about there being a time when this man, that in English we know him as Jesus Christ, is going to be the the king of the earth, the ruler of the earth, which is what mainline Christianity is, at least from what I understand, it's thought for the last few thousand years. What then does the group come up with that he was saying?
Well, I could respond to that by pointing to two of the sayings, at least, about the kingdom of God that the group is inclined to think do go back to Jesus, at least in some form. By the way, one of the inaccuracies in that news report is that we are not trying to determine the exact words of Jesus. It's impossible to determine the exact words of Jesus. What we are trying to do is to determine those items in the record that might, with some plausibility, go back to Jesus in some form or another. But many of us think that Jesus spoke Aramaic and probably didn't know Greek, and the only form in which we have the tradition is Greek, so we will never recover his exact words. But two of the sayings, this is one of them found in Luke 17:20. The kingdom of God is not coming with signs to be observed, nor will they say, lo, here it is, or there, for behold, the kingdom of God is in the midst of you. Now, it is difficult to know precisely what that means, but there is a corollary in Thomas, which we also think may reflect some of the ideas of Jesus, and it runs like this. The kingdom will not come by waiting for it. It will not be a matter of saying, here it is, or there it is. Rather, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and men do not see it. And then there's another one also